Once upon a time, there was a king who had 7 daughters. One day, the king was overjoyed and decided to call his daughters to ask them a question. He said, "I will ask each of you a question, and if I like your answer, I will reward you with whatever you wish." The daughters stood in a line, eager to hear their father's question. The king then asked, "Tell me, what do you eat, and what do you wear?" The first 6 daughters, all accustomed to the comforts and luxury provided by their father, answered, "Oh, father, we eat what you give us, and we wear what you provide." Hearing their answers, the king was very pleased, and immediately granted each of them their desired reward. When it was the turn of the youngest daughter, the king looked at her with a sense of curiosity. Her eyes sparkled with innocence and confidence. She smiled gently and replied, "Oh, father, I eat what Allah has given me, and I wear what Allah has provided for me. This is my fate, what my Lord has written for me. Everything I have is a blessing from Him." Upon hearing this, there was an instant silence in the court. This answer was unexpected, and everyone, including the king, was taken aback. The king was visibly surprised, and his face showed a mixture of anger and astonishment. He had not expected such a response from his own daughter. His face flushed with anger as he exclaimed, "You ungrateful one! Are you disregarding my generosity and blessings? You are insulting me and my efforts. How dare you speak like this?" Despite her father's anger, the youngest princess remained calm. There was no fear in her eyes, and her voice remained soft and firm. "As you wish, father." There was no defiance in her words, only humility and complete trust in Allah. The king, growing more furious, shouted, "Such insolence will not be tolerated. Take her away and execute her immediately. Let her face the consequences of disrespecting me." The court was stunned. It was unheard of for a king to order the execution of his own daughter. The soldiers moved toward the princess, but she stood still, unshaken. Her expression was peaceful, and she seemed unafraid of the fate awaiting her. At that moment, the king's minister, a wise and respected man, stepped forward. He approached the king and said, "Your Majesty, may I speak?" The king, still furious, turned to the minister and said, "Speak quickly, but make it brief." The minister, with great respect, said, "Your Majesty, this is your own daughter. While her words may have angered you, they are a reflection of her deep understanding and faith. Would it not be better to leave her in the forest and let her prove her faith? Let us see if she truly believes that Allah provides for her. We will see if she can survive by eating what Allah provides and wearing only what is destined for her." The king thought for a moment. His anger was still intense, but the minister's words made him reconsider. After a brief pause, the king nodded and said, "Very well. Instead of execution, take her to the forest and leave her there. Let us see how she survives without my help, relying only on what Allah provides." The soldiers approached the princess and began to lead her away. The princess walked with them, her face serene. She showed no fear, only trust in Allah. It was as if she knew that this test would be a path to Allah's mercy. In the forest, the princess was left alone, stripped of her fine clothes and jewels. She had nothing but the clothes she wore and her unwavering faith in Allah. Despite the harsh conditions of the wilderness, she remained at peace. She trusted that Allah would provide for her. Days passed, and the princess lived off whatever Allah gave her, the fruits from the trees and the resources around her. Her heart remained calm, and she did not feel lonely or abandoned. She knew that Allah, the Creator, was watching over her. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, the king awaited news of his daughter. He wanted to see if she would survive as she claimed, living only on what Allah had provided. Little did he know The princess was thriving in the forest. Her faith had not wavered, and she was at peace, knowing that Allah was with her. The story of the princess spread throughout the kingdom. People were amazed at her courage and faith. The king, too, began to reflect on his daughter's words. He had seen that true gratitude and faith could elevate a person's spirit beyond the material gifts of this world. As night approached, she gathered some wood to light a fire. While searching for firewood, she noticed a small hut with a goat tied outside, and from within, she heard the sound of coughing. The princess entered the hut and found an elderly man lying on a cot, desperately calling for water. She immediately filled a pot with water and offered it to the old man, also cleaning the hut for him. The elderly man asked, "Who are you, my dear, and what brings you alone to such a large forest?" The princess explained her entire situation to him. The next morning, the elderly man said, "I'm going to the city for work and will return in 7 or 8 days. You can stay here. There is enough food and water, and the river is nearby, so you can fill water whenever needed. Also, you can milk the goat." With these words, the old man left. Each night, the princess would milk the goat, keeping half of the milk for herself and placing the other half outside in a bowl, hoping that any animal or bird passing by would drink it if hungry or thirsty. Then she would peacefully sleep. The next morning, when the princess woke up, the chirping of birds and the cool breeze gently roused her. She slowly got up and opened the door of the hut. As she stepped outside, her eyes fell on the bowl, which was now empty. However, the space around the bowl was glowing with an unusual light. The princess approached the bowl and saw a precious red pearl lying next to it, sparkling in the sunlight. Filled with a mix of surprise and joy, the princess picked up the red pearl. Her heart was filled with curiosity as she wondered how the pearl had ended up there. She then noticed snake tracks on the ground near the bowl. Immediately, a childhood story her grandmother had told her came to her mind. Her grandmother had said that when a snake is happy or influenced by something, it expresses its joy by spitting out a precious red pearl, more valuable than a hero's treasure. A smile spread across the princess's face, and she thought to herself perhaps it was the same snake that had come to drink the milk the night before. The snake had been hungry and thirsty, and after drinking the milk it had become happy. As a sign of its happiness, the snake had left the precious red pearl behind. The princess looked closely at the red pearl, which shone brightly, almost blinding her eyes. She silently thanked Allah and thought, "This is another sign from Allah that He never leaves His servants alone." The event gave her further assurance and peace in her heart. She thought, when the intention is pure and the heart is filled with compassion, Allah creates paths for His servants that go beyond human understanding. She carefully placed the red pearl in a safe spot and made a silent vow to place the milk in the bowl again that night, hoping to see if the miracle would occur again. The realization that nature itself had come to her aid gave the princess a new sense of hope and courage. She saw her trial turning into a sign of Allah's mercy. With a smile in her heart, she said to herself, "Alhamdulillah, Allah has not let my patience and trust go in vain." The princess wondered again about the snake. Perhaps it had been hungry and thirsty, and after drinking the milk it became joyful, expressing its happiness by leaving the red pearl behind. As evening fell, the princess again placed the milk in the bowl outside the hut, hoping to see whether the miracle would happen once more. She then went to bed, peacefully and contentedly, knowing that her faith and trust in Allah would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Every morning, the princess would find the bowl empty and a new red pearl lying beside it. She continued this ritual every night and every morning for 7 days. Each time the snake would drink the milk, and in return it would leave behind a precious red pearl. On the 7th day, the elderly man returned from the city. The princess eagerly shared the entire story with him and gave him 3 of the red pearls. She said, "Go to the city, sell these pearls, and use the money to bring workers and supplies to build a palace." The princess kept the remaining 4 pearls and made a necklace, which she wore around her neck. In just a few months, a magnificent palace was built in the forest. The palace was equipped with every kind of luxury, including servants, workers, and every comfort of the world. The princess also established a wood factory where poor laborers could work and earn a living. Slowly, the forest area began to take the shape of a thriving city, and its fame spread far and wide. Word of this reached the princess's father, the king. He was astonished and thought to himself, "Who is this princess who has accomplished all this in such a short time?" Curious, the king sent his soldiers to invite her, mentioning that the king of a neighboring kingdom wanted to meet her. The princess responded, "I will accept the invitation, on the condition that the king brings all of his daughters to my palace." The king agreed to this condition, and one day he arrived at the palace with his 6 daughters. The princess, covered in a veil, met her father and sisters. She served them a grand feast of 7 different colored dishes, each accompanied by matching clothes and jewelry. The king was deeply impressed by the grandeur of the palace and the princess's elegance. He could not help but say, "You are more worthy of being my daughter than my own daughters. You have outdone them in every way." He then asked, "Why this veil? What are you hiding?" The princess replied, "I will be right back. Allow me to prepare myself." Meanwhile, her other sisters began whispering to each other, "She wears such expensive clothes and so much jewelry. How much more will she prepare for us?" As they were talking, the king noticed a simple girl approaching, wearing plain clothes. He looked closely and realized that it was his own daughter. He was astonished and thought to himself, "I had assumed wild animals had taken her. When I sent soldiers to search the forest, they reported she was not there. How is it possible that she is here?" Overjoyed, the king rushed to greet his daughter. "My dear, you are so fortunate to have been living with such a great princess. Come with me, and I will free you from her service. If she asks for my entire kingdom in return for your freedom, I will gladly give it to her." The princess lowered her eyes for a moment, a mysterious smile spreading across her face, as if a hidden truth was about to be revealed. The king and her sisters watched her in confusion. She raised her head and spoke gently, "Father, that princess does not need to be summoned from afar." The king, still perplexed, asked, "Why? Is she nearby?" With a smile, the princess removed her veil and said, "Because I am that princess." The king's eyes widened in disbelief, and a wave of shock spread throughout the court. Everyone was stunned. The king took a few steps forward, unable to believe what he was hearing, and asked, "How is this possible? You were alone in the forest. How did you acquire this palace, all this grandeur?" The princess spoke with complete confidence. "Father, do you remember when I told you that I eat what Allah has given me and wear what Allah has provided? All this is the result of my trust in Him." The princess smiled and said, "This is all the grace of Allah. You tested me, but my Lord blessed me with success. This palace, this wealth, all of it is a gift from my Lord." The king took a deep breath. His eyes filled with mixed emotions of embarrassment and pride. He said, "My daughter, you have taught me a lesson today that I will never forget." The princess, still smiling, replied, "Trials come not to break us, but to strengthen us, father. And when we place our complete trust in Allah, no power in the world can defeat us." This moment became a turning point for the king and everyone present. A daughter had proven with her patience, trust, and courage that Allah's decisions are always the best. The princess, still smiling, said, "Father, do you remember what I told you before?" The king, confused, asked, "What did you say?" The princess responded, "I told you that I eat what Allah has given me, and wear what He has destined for me. Look, I am eating what Allah has given me, and wearing what He has destined. All of this is a gift from my Lord." She continued, "Father, Allah has elevated me from where I was, and today I am wealthier than you." Upon hearing this, all the other princesses thought to themselves, if only we had said the same thing and trusted in Allah's plan, perhaps we too would be as prosperous as our sister. This story teaches us that we should always remain content with whatever state Allah places us in. A person who trusts in Allah is never abandoned. Dear viewers, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever heard a similar story from your grandparents? Or is this your first time? If you watched this video to the end, please write the word "complete" in the comments so we can see how many people watched it till the very end. Friends, don't forget to give a thumbs up to the princess for her unwavering faith. Like this video, and if you enjoyed it, share it with others. Also, subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos.